that's the key to staff.
So the big question is, what are top agents doing to absolutely crush it in real estate, grow their teams and add more transactions year over year while so many struggle? To get the answers, we interview top real estate agents to learn their secrets to success. Listen, we believe every agent should make a minimum of $100,000 per year, and we're on a mission to make this happen. We've already helped over 100 agents achieve this with our coaching. So if you want to fast track your business growth, get to your first $100,000 in GCI or add another $100,000 in GCI using social strategies, then head over to go.eliteagentsecrets.com, or you can just click the link in the description below. Also, just make sure to follow us, hit that subscribe button, and if you get any value from this at all, please tell a friend and leave us a review. My name is Andrew Dunn.
And my name is Peter Michael. Welcome to Elite Agent Secrets.
Hey everyone, and welcome to this episode of Elite Agent Secrets. Today we've got Jeff Leslie with us. He is a self-made millionaire. He's been in real estate for 10 years. He is the #1 sales agent in the entire of the Cape Fear region across North Carolina. He, across all real estate brands as well. He's done over 850 transactions in his 10-year career. 128 homes in 2020, 109 homes in 2021. He's going to go on a record set in 2022, and he's going to break down exactly how he's going to do it with his top 3 secrets to success today. Jeff, thanks for jumping on the podcast with us. We can't wait to unveil how you sell 120 homes, 850 in a career. It's fucking awesome to have you on the show. We love it. Let's get down to business.
Thanks for having me.
First of all, that's mental. Those numbers are like, I'm trying to do the numbers in my head and I will have to pull out a calculator because my mind is not that quick. What the fuck, Jeff? Talk about a lot of hard work over the last 10 years, but I know this may be a big ask. Take us back to day one and help us understand how Jeff got into this business and how did you build the compound effect over the last 10 years to be in a position to do over 120 deals in a calendar year?
So I originally got my license as a side gig. And so I was like, I'll sell a house every now and then, it'll be a personal house. Then I got into it and I had 2 or 3 people tell me that I couldn't hit the goals that I was told I could hit. Because I was sitting down with my broker and they're like, oh, you could do this, this, this. And I had 2 people tell me I couldn't do it. And I said, fucking watch me. And so then I just sat back. And at that point, we set it all out, ready to go. And then since then, the plan kicked in. My first full year in the business, I sold 37. My next year was 60, then 60, and then 90. And it's been over 100 ever since then.
Jesus.
You just broke probably one of my limiting beliefs, because when Andrew and I sat down, Andrew's always the person where it's like you set a goal, you put in a plan in place, you execute against it, and you hit it. If you tell him like, I want 100 deals, he'll be like, okay. He's never going to tell you can't do it, but he's going to challenge you into thinking of how it's going to be done every single step of the way. So when you say 37
in your first year.
In your first year.
Yeah.
Yep. So I got in
part-time, so like this was a side gig.
And this was 2011. So this was bottom of the market too. So it was May of 11, I got my license. It was about September or October of 11 when I just jumped in full force and said, this is going to be the full-time gig now. Started listing houses during that time frame. I would be on the phones, I'd say 5 or 6 hours a day, just calling to try to list properties. Back then, we had this thing called an expired listing. It's crazy those actually existed then. We obviously have very few of them now, but I kind of put my teeth fully on the expireds and jumped in on those drastically. And I have agents all the time. They're like, well, how do you sell this? I'm like, no, look at what I used to sell. Look at that single wide trailer that I sold. Look at this property in the middle of the hood that I sold. Like any of these things is what you do to protect your commission, to protect your 6 months. You're basically cutting your teeth learning. And that all just carries forward to a higher price tag later.
What did you find when you first started calling that was like something that worked for you? And do you still do it today? Do you teach agents today? Because there are still a lot of agents that are listening to this that are like FSBOs, expireds, diehards. We have a few agents that have done extremely well, but every single one that we've interviewed has a different strategy on how they actually do it.
So I've was a top agent in our company at the time when I started. She was coached by Mike Ferry. And a lot of the company training was based on Mike Ferry coaching, just kind of the company modification. And you guys are familiar with his stuff. His is a little more direct. And so, of course, everybody softens it up. So the initial stuff I'm trained on was, we'll call it the softened Mike Ferry stuff. And it was still good enough information to go out and do what I needed to do. Like I've talked with my broker many times since then. When I got in, it was more blind faith of, okay, well, because I asked him, I was like, what is that agent doing that nobody else is doing? And he's like, well, she does what we tell her to do and doesn't ask questions. And I was like, okay, fair. So I didn't ask questions. I just made the phone calls, used the scripts, and landed the appointments, and it worked.
You're like a dream. You are, Jeff. Someone that you go, don't ask questions and do it. And you're like, okay, then. It's like, oh, fuck, I wish everyone would do that, man. Yep. Trust me, this stuff works. Just execute against it. Stop trying to reinvent the wheel. So your first 36, how many years were you just calling? How long did that strategy persist until other strategies you started using? Because you basically said by year 4, you were doing 100 deals, right?
Yep.
Which is huge.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys know Greg Harrelson on Myrtle Beach, but I give him props. He runs the Center 21 about an hour and a half from where I'm at. And so my first year, the 37 and then the 60 and the 60, I hired my first assistant 12 months in. So I got licensed May of 11, hired first assistant May of 12. And then I was debating trying to figure out what that magical jump was from 60 to 100. And I was down at Greg's office. My last year of 65 was, I think, 47 buy sides. So it was so heavy on the buy side. So I learned to get very efficient with them. And then he said, Jeff, the only way to hit 100 is if you switch to listings. So my very next year, I literally switched from, it was about 80-20 buy sides to I switched to 75-25 list sides. So I just intentionally kind of targeted that direction, and I basically freed my time up. And because that's the biggest thing, is a lot of people, the easiest and quickest paycheck is a buyer. There's always one calling or doing something, or somebody said they want something. That doesn't mean they're motivated, doesn't mean they're going to be pulling the trigger quickly. And you just spend so much time on, as we know. It's much easier. I tell people listings are more expensive because if you market them right, they are. But buyers are more time consuming. So if you want to really hit the numbers, you've got to switch to the listing side and spend the money and make it happen.
So when you say spend the money and switch over to the listing side, what are some of the tangible strategies or actionable that, whether you're new or you're seasoned, that you can implement if you are not a predominantly listing agent, that you'd recommend for anybody listening?
The biggest thing, and if you guys are good, I'll go ahead and get into my first secret, because this is the secret. Yeah. So like I said, May of 11, got my license. May of 12, hired my first assistant, and everybody told me I was freaking insane. But at that point, I was 20 hours with me, 20 hours with somebody else. But my broker, owner, everybody was like, you don't need an employee until you've already closed 50 deals. I was like, nah, I know what I need. And so for me, I don't like doing admin. I don't like doing stuff behind the scenes. In North Carolina, a licensed agent on the listing side technically only has to do about 5 or 6 activities. You have to be the one actually making the cold calls. You have to be going on the appointments. You have to be negotiating the contract, negotiate the repairs, and then go pick up your paycheck. So it's pretty straightforward on the listing side. So you can delegate out everything else. And so what I did was I was basically bringing somebody on to do the paperwork. And my office now, I've got 3 full-time admin, no buyers agents or anything. But I've got kind of the current positions, as I call them, is my business development coordinator, which is a new position this year. She's my 6 to 12 month person. Excuse me. She's planning client parties. She's the one that's kind of sending out the touches, the mailers, and all to our past clients. I tell her she's a 6 to 12 month paycheck. So they're going to read something today and see it again next month and see it again the next month. And that's going to generate a business then. I've got Ashley, who's my listing and closing coordinator. So she's kind of in the weeks and the months. So her job is get a property ready for market. And then when it's under contract, hold their hand, work with the attorney, all that kind of stuff to get that moving. And then I've got Hannah, who I just hired about 2 weeks ago. Hers is more the minute by minute, day by day type position. So inbound phone calls are going to her. When an agent calls and says, hey, can you have pets at this rental property? She's the one that I say, just look up the HOA docs, figure that out and let them know. So she does kind of the immediate stuff to keep me from getting pulled into the day-to-day admin, that's the problem of any top producing agent. When you've got as many deals going as you've got going, you get pulled into so much day to day if you don't have the right staffing.
So you run a fairly lean and mean team.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I was going to say, you've done say 120 deals a year, which is average out. You do say, even if you said 100, which is low, I understand, but say you're doing 100 deals a year and you've only just hired essentially 2 of those people. So for those previous years, it basically been you and one other person to do 100 deals a year.
It was one, and then I hired the second one probably my third or fourth year in the business, and I've ran two deep for quite a while. The biggest challenge, and we'll go ahead and get into this now, we kind of talked about it, was 128 in 2020 and 109 in 2021. I had two employees that both worked for me about 3.5, 4.5 years each. One had a baby and decided to go full-time mom mode, and the other one decided she wanted to get into mortgages. More power to them both. Like, I kind of did the training. We got them to where they needed to be to kind of jump off to the next step. So in 2021, by April, I went from 8.5 years experience to 6 months experience of all my employees. And that's your biggest training curve. And any top producer, staffing is your biggest challenge, and it's your biggest asset, because you can negotiate, you can basically delegate everything out. And I tell people all the time, they're like, how do you master delegation? I'm like, you don't. You master trust. And so if you really hire somebody, you've got the right systems, you get to the point in a month or so, you can trust them and hand it off, then you can delegate anything. I will be the first to tell you too, I've got what I call a 10,000 a year old shit fund. And it literally is just money that I've got sitting to the side that says, oh shit, we dropped the ball on something. Let's go fix the problem. So I literally repainted 2 houses this year in that staffing transition, because we didn't have the document signed off on from the previous person I thought to the new one. And then we get all the way to closing and the house is the wrong color. I'm not going to go to my clients and say, too bad. I literally called my painter that I work with on stuff and said, go paint the house. And it was $2,800 and $3,200, whatever it was. But that's a cost of doing business to let me make several $100,000 more.
Right. When it comes to actual staffing, because this is like a super hot topic, there's like, I think it's so poignant what you said. It's not about delegation, it's about trust, because it totally is. And that is, it's something that's earned. No, it's not necessarily given. Like, you don't just go, hey, it depends on how you do it, but I don't just walk in and go, hey, you've got all my trust, like, go and do an amazing thing. It's something that is built up, and it does take time to kind of to build that. When it comes to actual hires, you've made a few hires now, especially more recent, so you're probably in a better position now than you were even 6 months ago, because you had all these amazing people who've been working for you for so long. How do you go about finding the people, vetting them, hiring them? What does that process look like for you? Where have you found the best hires, people, your trusted people and other people that you have hired in the past as well? Like, what's kind of some experience there that you can shed light on for people? Because a lot of solo agents, even it's more prevalent with even bigger ones. It's that struggle to let go, man. Like, I'll do it myself because I can trust myself to do it. And it's like, because I can't, we hear it all the time, I can't find any good people. And it's like, it's not that they don't exist. There is just a bit of a process to it. And so I'd love to get you to expand on yours.
Well, you kind of hit on it earlier. I'm similar to what you are. I trust nobody until you've earned it. And then at that point, I almost trust too much. Some people are the other way. And I think those are the ones that screw up the most, is they trust everybody right away. I just hired Joe. He's going to be able to do this, this, this. And I'm like, well, have you trained them on anything? And they don't train them. And then they get mad when they can't figure it out, because they almost delegate too much too fast. I'm like, when we were getting ready to hire Hannah back in October, November, Brenna, my business development coordinator, she said, do we need somebody right now, or let's wait till next year so we can hit these? I was like, no, we hire her now, and we'll slowly just give her enough per week. But a lot of people think they've got to fill up the employees 40 hours on day one. Not the case, in my opinion. I think you honestly hire them, you get them mastering a couple things. That first 2 months, they're probably putting in a total of 50 or 60 hours of productive work for you, like of true hardcore productive work. But you've got to be willing to say, okay, master the phone side of it, then master this, and then master this, and not worry about the fact that they might not have anything to do. If she's sitting on her phone when I haven't trained her on something, I don't give a shit. If I'm out on 3 appointments, I'm still doing my job, and I'm not stopping my job to just give her busy work. Now, the next week, we're going to train on something else and something else. So by the time you get 2, 3, 4 months into it, you've got them where you want them to be. But kind of like what I was hitting on earlier, the way that the job description I give my employees now, and this was a hire from 4 or 5 years ago now, I changed my philosophy altogether. She said, what's my job description? She basically wanted the job description to hire. And I said, I'll give it to you. I said, here are the 150 things that have to happen on a transaction. I have to do 6. Your job is to do the rest of them and take one more thing away from me each week. And that's really what it comes down to. Because with the listing side of it, like I said, there's very little you got to do. And the more that they can do, the better off you are. And we went through this activity with one of my coaches probably 2 years ago, basically saying, okay, well, now have them lay out all their steps along the way. And where do you pull Jeff in and why? And we literally kind of narrowed it down to a few more things that they didn't have to pull me into. So once you get efficient, you can still get more efficient.
One of the things that I wanted to circle back on, because it kind of got me thinking as you're talking about efficiency, if anybody is a predominantly buyer's agent, because that's how most agents start out, right? They're dealing a lot with buyers, and that's just very common. It doesn't have to be. How did you get that process down so efficient that you still managed to do 37 and 60 plus deals the first year, the second year? Because that's a lot to manage, and you have to be extremely efficient. So I'm just trying to think about what are some of the things like you're carving out or delegating down, or how are you actually doing that? Because I have a problem sometimes managing 4, 5, 6 deals at a time. So if I'm doing my numbers correctly, you're managing that like it's a, piss in a pod, and it's like, cool, not a big deal, because we have it down so packed.
So I've got right now, I think there's 32 that are pending. And so you've got to...
I got 3.
But people will call me all the time, and like, especially agents are the worst. They'll be like, where are we on this? And I'm like, I don't know, but I'll ask Ashley. And if I knew that answer, that's my problem. And so most of the time I don't want to know. I tell her, like, pull me in when I need to know stuff and when there's problems along the way. But for her to master the rest of it and me just stay out of her way, that's the key to staffing. And so coming back to your early on thing, like, so I hired my first assistant about 12 months in, and the first 3 years were heavy buyers. And I've gotten even better at this since then. But like right now for me with a buyer, I will have the initial conversation with them up front, figure out what they're looking for. We'll do what I call digital window shopping, which, as we all know, is basically setting up an MLS portal. Let them kind of just get the properties kind of trickling in their way. They'll call, hey, this property you just sent me. And I'm like, what the fuck property did I just send you? And I pull up the MLS to see what just went their way that day. And I'll pull it up, and then we're quickly figuring out, okay, yes, that was the right one. I've basically got like a buyer profile on everybody, and my employees know they check the MLS about 3 or 4 times a day. And it's say, this person wants to be this area on the water, X, Y, and Z. Hey, this property popped in. Do you think it's worthwhile for them? I'll look at it and be like, nah, they wanted a bigger master closet. But they're kind of throwing it in front of me to kind of look at. And that's just one more step you don't have to do. There's zero paperwork, obviously, you need to do as a buyer's agent. You can delegate all of that out. So there's no point in you scheduling your own showings. I literally will tell my clients, okay, well, great, Ashley's going to give you a call, and she's going to check with your schedule and then get everything on the books for you. So when properties hit, I'll just tell her, schedule this property. And she's got full access to my calendar. She calls them, puts it on the calendar. And literally, we've kind of mastered it. Sometimes there's a question of how long to stay at each one. But otherwise, we'll lay out the full schedule on that in the system. I am not, and I know a lot of coaching, and even Mike Ferry would probably kill me if I said this, I am not a fan of, here's the top 2 or 3 houses you need to see. That is not the world we're in these days. I got kind of a little bit of timing perspective. I got in May of 11, got licensed in May of 11. June of 11 is when Zillow went public. So I've been a Zillow agent the entire time. Like, I've known Zillow existed. I think a lot of agents that kind of hate Zillow, they were like, what's changing our marketplace right now? For me, because I've got my master's in business as well, and I just look at, okay, that was a multi-billion-dollar business. How can I utilize them? So for Zillow, the buyers are seeing every single house. So as soon as you show them 2 or 3, they've still got 3 more in their head that they saw last week at 10 p.m. laying in bed. Well, I'm not sure if I want to pull the trigger because of that house we saw last week. Next thing you know, they're calling you tomorrow to view those 3 houses. So I tell them that we're going to go through the full list. We're going to narrow it down to 10, 15 houses or whatever. We're going to literally walk in the house. And if you don't like it because of the neighborhood or whatever, we're turning around and walking right back out. We're not going to go look and see how cute the toilet is in the master bathroom or anything like that. We're literally going to walk right back out the door, get in the car, go to the next house. Then we'll go back and we'll view the top 2 or 3 that you like. And in this market, usually there's nothing they like round 1. But at least you've narrowed all those out now, so that when it comes now to the next property hitting in 3 days, you can say, this is your property because of X, Y, and Z. You've heard their feedback enough during that 2 or 3 hour window to really be able to figure out what they're looking for. Show them that property. It may or may not work. You might get in a bidding war. You might lose. Who knows? But you there again got to set the right expectations of, you've got to have a bigger deposit. You've got to have all these things that a 2021 market is versus a 2018 market when they bought last or whatever it might be. So, and then really by the time I'm leaving the appointment, I'm calling my assistant, type the paperwork up, and then we'll DocuSign it out to them. The assistant's then setting up the inspections, all that good stuff. repair request comes in, I don't do any of that. I literally will print it. My assistant will print it, have it sitting on my desk ready to go for me. I'll highlight and say, type these things up. I'll call the client. They'll basically email it to the client, and Ashley will say, hey, when are you available to talk to Jeff about these highlighted items he has a problem with? We'll then talk about it. She'll type it all up. We send it to the other agent, negotiate that piece out, and we're done. And then let's show for closing on that. So it's really ultra efficiency. But the biggest part and the problem here is a listing appointment takes 30 minutes to an hour, and a buyer takes 2, 3, 5, 7, 10 hours of showing houses.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. I'm thinking, and as you were saying your process, I'm like, yep, I'm not doing that. Yep, I'm not doing that. Yep, I got to pull somebody in for this. Got to pull somebody in for this. And it's like the little stuff that you were saying. I'm very big about drafting the contracts and everything in myself when it comes to that perspective. But one of the things, I don't know why I didn't think of this. It's, that's a great question. I don't have an answer for that, but I'm not doing your deals, which means I'm not going to be writing my contracts moving forward, because I'm going to go ahead and just implement this and have somebody else do it, so I can now show twice as many houses. Because that's
you're responsible for it, is the way I look at it. So literally, Ashley will send me an email and say, contract for Joe Blow for this address is ready to go. I'll go in and review it, and then she'll DocuSign it out. So you're still responsible for it, but there's no need for you to go pull the parcel ID number and all the stuff that you need, all that crap and it's literally every time you save 5 minutes, and I will even a lot of times we'll be like, all right, this is going to be an hour-long training because I'm going to save 5 minutes for the next 3 years. And if you literally just get everything that efficient to pull 5 more minutes out of your day, then you can do so much more stuff.
I'm in complete agreement there.
To be fair, when the question was being asked, I was like, 100% a no for certain. I mean, it was going to shock me more, Jeff, if you didn't just go essentially process. Like, I've just processed it out. Yeah, right. And I knew that was going to be it, because you can't do, and the thing is scales, process scales, and not having one doesn't. That's why you run around like headless chicken. To go back to the recruiting side, because I know that was topic one, because there's a couple of things. I know the later points. So where did you find these two? Were they friends? How did you come across the first two? Because I've got a couple of questions. One is, where did you find them? Which, just for listeners, hopefully they can take something from it. The next one is, I completely agree. It's like, they're not going to be able to do their job until you've trained them. A lot of people don't do the training. They just walk in and they go, fucking do something. And then you're like, what do I do? And then you're like, you're fired because you're not doing it. It's like, you haven't fucking told me what to do, how to do it. Like, what are you talking about? And it's actually a failure on the leader's side. It's not a failure on the new person side. And then the other thing was, my final question was going to be around, are the people you've hired, are they salaried and commission, or how does that work? Because if they weren't salaried, how does the whole taking 2 weeks to train them work for their pay? So they were kind of a couple of questions that I had.
So we'll go ahead and jump to that one. So apparently I was the first real estate agent in our market to W-2 employees, but it's much easier, because at first I started out with one as a 1099, and then the first time that she didn't realize how to manage money and had a big tax bill to pay, I was like, crap. I was like, I've kind of set her up for failure that way. And I went to my accountant literally the very next, and this was after the first year. So this would have been end of 12. And I said, well, what do I do to take taxes out? He's like, W-2. He's like, but you don't want to do that. It's going to cost you more money. I was like, I don't give a shit. Like, for me, just make it so that I can hire people from their point of view too. All that's taken out, so it's much easier. I've got health insurance for my employees because it's cheaper to do a group health plan for me at my income level and have all of them own it than it is for me to have my own personal health care plan. And I did that probably 4 years ago when I lost a great employee to a big company here in town. And literally I was like, so, what's your thoughts on it? She's like, well, the fact they got healthcare, they got this. I was like, shit. So if I really paid an extra $300 per month, I would have kept a rock star. And so you really got to kind of look at those little things to get the right people in the seat. Coming back to where did they come from? So Ashley, who works for me now, took me, I originally was 5 years ago, I guess it was. I was out with two buddies of mine, and we were at a bar watching the Carolina Duke basketball game. And I'd said, I've got an employee leaving, and my buddy Sean, who he ran and sold a big trash company here in town, so knew how to run a business. He's like, to be honest with you, if I was going to hire somebody, I'd hire her. And they had been going to that bar many times. And I look and I'm like, all right, she's got this random guy hitting on her. She's got this person she's taking 10 drinks for. She's got this person doing this, a baby crying in the corner, answering the phone, taking an order, coming right back and smiling, talking to everybody else. And I'm like, that's fucking real estate. Like our day is, our day is that chaotic of where everything is insane. And we've got to still have our A game on as soon as we talk to the next person. So you've got to be able.
I'm laughing because when you said that's real estate, Andrew and I had a conversation last night, and I was literally describing that type of scenario just in a real estate context. And that's why we were both laughing, because like every day it's basically, I feel like we're almost like, in a way, and nobody get offended here, but we're almost like glorified adult babysitters when it comes to buying
100%.
houses.
Yep.
We deal with shit that like I would have never thought I had to deal with. Like this didn't come in my quote unquote job description, you know? Like this morning, 7 a.m., I was helping one of my clients, a lovely couple, move shit into their place because the movers canceled on them last minute. I'm not going to leave them high and dry and hanging. I'm going to get up a little bit earlier so I can still make a breakfast with my family. But this is shit that you just do, you know? But they call you in a panic at 11 o'clock at night. I'm like, oh, well, like, what am I supposed to say? No.
I feel like real estate is a circus at the best of times. That's what I feel like.
Without a doubt. And you just hope you got a ticket to the show. But yeah. So that was like 5 years ago, literally. And then Ashley didn't start working for me until probably 2 years ago, right when COVID kicked in, because the bar that she was working at shut it down. And she's like, hey, I know we talked about a job, and literally one of my employees had just left about that time. And I was like, I was getting ready at that time to kind of start gearing up to the third employee. And I was like, you can start doing this part-time. And then one of the employee leaves, and I was like, okay, now you can go and come and just do full-time. But her boyfriend over the years, because this is now, they're still dating after 5 years. And he's told her multiple times, he's like, you should have went to work for Jeff. You should have went to work for Jeff. And so then finally, when that window opened, she came right in. So it was an easy sell for me. Another one of the business development coordinator. So English teacher here at a high school for 9 years. She's a good friend of mine. I've known for probably 4 or 5 years. And she came to me about this was maybe 2-3 years ago, just before COVID even kicked in. And she's like, well, I'm debating on, one day I might want to get out of teaching. It's not the best thing ever anymore, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, well, what if you could write on your resume, you write ad copy for the #1 real estate agent in town? And she's like, talk to me about it. So literally I told her, I said, here's what we're going to do. Like, I want to have you write ad copy for every one. And I'm going to pay you, I think it was $25 or $30 per ad copy, which I laugh at now. And she was like, yeah, not a problem. And literally about 3 weeks in, I called her and I was like, I'm going to start paying you $50 per ad copy because I don't ever want to do this again. And so she wrote ad copy for me for about a year or so. Came on January of this year, and I was like, I want to start sending out a newsletter to my clients. Will you write it for me? And literally, she writes the whole damn thing, and I just review it and then modify what we're going to do in it. She started doing that. So she was teaching and doing that kind of as a side gig because teachers don't make enough money. And then when this was June of this year, or I guess May of this year, she's like, so, you had an employee leave, or 2021, you had an employee leave. Like, what are your thoughts overall? And I was like, here's what I could lay out for you. And she took a little bit of a cut between the two to come on full time, still making good money. But at that point, I was like, come on, let's just make it happen. She's my, I tell her when we first started, I was like, you're going to set out a lesson plan. I said, because I'm a clusterfuck. So I need you to literally lay out the next year, what we're going to do, when we're going to do it, how we're going to get there. And she lays everything out on the calendar, has it all planned out, ready to go, and we're set. So that's how that one happened.
Of your self-awareness and candidness is like, I'm a clusterfuck, so you got to do this. And like, at least you know your strengths and your weaknesses. And I think, oh, and by the way, would you consider yourself a maverick? Are you an agent, team leader, broker owner who's constantly striving, pushing boundaries and smashing goals? Well, we've already helped over 100 agents cross $100,000 and up in GCI per year. So if you're interested in learning more about our courses and coaching to help you scale your business, then head over to go.eliteagentsecrets.com.